If marathon training is on the horizon for you, having the right gear is essential. And topping that list is finding the right pairs of running shoes. But can't you use the running shoes you already have? Maybe, but maybe not. Listen in on this video, guys. I'm going to give you a full rundown of getting the right shoes and the right running shoe rotation ready to go for day one of your marathon training. Now, first and foremost, when you're entering marathon training, you want to keep your health in mind above all else. And getting the right running shoes is actually a contributing factor in keeping your body healthy, but maybe not in the way that you would think. So we're also going to touch on that as part of how to choose your running shoes and setting up a running rotation. And then I'll also be covering some top recommendations for you on shoe choices because I know it can be really overwhelming. Ultimately, you're going to want to choose what works best for you, but hopefully these will guide you as you make those choices. All right, so step one in the process is to determine if the shoes you already have are up for the task of marathon training. Now, with marathon training, you're going to be running a lot more miles than you have in the past or what you're used to. And so you need to have a pair of shoes that's ready to take on that mileage. So a good rule of thumb is to have about 300 to 500 miles on a pair of shoes before you start phasing them out of your running. Now, I know that 300 to 500 miles is a pretty wide range, so you also maybe need to consider some other factors like how worn they are on the bottom. So if you take a look at this pair of shoes, you can see that everything is pretty worn off. There was actually something written right here that you can't see anymore. It is written on this one. It says foot shape, and you can just see that the tread on these is much better, and these are a lot newer than this pair of shoes. Now, if you're like me, you maybe don't know exactly how many miles are on each pair of your shoes. If you've only been wearing one and you've kept a running log, like on Garmin or something like that, it's pretty easy to go back, add up your miles, and think about, okay, I was only wearing these shoes, so this is how many miles are on this pair of shoes. Ooh, yeah, I'm already above 500 miles on these shoes. It's time for me to get a new pair. Or if you just are feeling some extra aches and pains while you're running them, it's probably a good time to phase them out and get something new. Now, if you already have a newer pair of shoes, you can certainly bring those into your marathon training as you get started on that, which is a good thing. But the thing is, you're going to want to have more than one pair of shoes to start at least a little bit of a rotation. All right, so step two in the process is choosing your shoes based on fit and comfort above all else. Now, you guys are going to hear all of these words like maximalist, high cushioning, minimalist, zero drop, stability, and then it's overwhelming to think about what shoes you should be purchasing when in reality, all of those things don't matter nearly as much as the shoe companies want you to believe. Ultimately, you guys need to go somewhere and try the shoes on. Yes, you can buy shoes online once you've kind of fit into a pair and you know they work for you and you're buying the next model or something like that. That's probably going to work for you. But I would highly suggest, even if you've had a shoe that's worked for you in the past to some extent, as you're moving into these higher miles, it would be a really good idea to go to a running store, talk to an expert, have them fit you, have them look at your gait, run on the treadmill in the shoes, and so that they can fit you properly in a pair of shoes that are going to feel really, really good on your feet as you start all of these miles. But it's not just their opinion that matters. If they say this shoe is going to work really well for you and you try them on and they don't feel good, then don't choose those shoes. There's lots of different options, so you don't want to walk out of there thinking that you settled when there would have been a better pair. And plus, you're spending a lot of money on these shoes, and so you want to make sure that it's the right fit. If you are in a situation where you don't have a local running store and you need to order online, then order from a reputable company online that has a good return policy that, specializes in running shoes. And that way, if you try them out, they have a return policy where you can, exchange them for something different, or perhaps order a couple different styles, wear them around your house, see what feels good for you. Ultimately, though, you want to try the shoes on, try them out with running, because in terms of keeping your body healthy, if the shoe is comfortable and it fits you right, that's going to matter more for keeping your joints and your muscles and your bones, all of those things, because ultimately every single person is different. Everybody's running style is different, running form is different, and your needs are different. All right, so the last step in choosing your marathon training and racing shoes is to get that second and maybe even a third pair of shoes. So we're going to talk about why it's so important to have two pairs of shoes and why you might want to consider having a third pair of shoes as an option. So you may have heard that you should rotate your running shoes because you want to give the cushion time to pop back the next day. And I've kind of heard differing opinions on that. I don't know about studies that have been done if that's really true or not. So instead, the basis of rotating your running shoes between two different styles, I'm going off this study that I'm going to cite below that I've actually seen cited in several different articles, is that they took two groups of runners, and the one runners rotated between two different styles of running shoes, and the other group of runners only wore the same pair. Well, the group of runners who were rotating their running shoes were 39% less likely to incur a running injury. So we know that shoes is only one factor in terms of making sure that you're not sustaining running injury. But it does seem to be true that rotating your running shoes between different styles is really helpful in keeping your body strong and healthy and honestly just feeling good. Now, why the reason for having two different styles? This is the big part of it, is because when you're using different running shoes that are not exactly the same, then they are putting different pressures on those parts of your legs and your joints. And so if you're always wearing the same running shoes, then the things like the cushioning, the drop, if it has a plate in it or not, all of those things are doing, the same thing to your leg day after day after day if you're wearing the exact same kind. Whereas if you're changing those to even those little nuances, then they're putting different pressures on different parts of your legs and your body, which keep you strong from day to day to day. Now, as someone who runs 6 days a week, and I actually have 5 different pairs of shoes in my running rotation, it's just comfortable to have a different shoe the next day than I had the day before. So ultimately, it's not only about what the study says, because it's not perfect, honestly, and you'll find people who probably argue against that, but overall, it just feels better from day to day. And as you're upping the mileage and as you're upping your days of your week of your running, you want to feel good day to day. When you step outside to go for that run, you want to feel like those shoes are in optimal condition and ready for that day. And so I would say that's the biggest factor in having at least 2 pairs of shoes to rotate through. So really, essentially, with these 2 shoes, you're going to have one that's probably for your recovery days specifically that have a higher amount of cushioning. And then on your easy long run days, you're going to have something that still has a good amount of cushioning, but has maybe a little bit less, not as much of that maximal cushioning that feels really good on those recovery days. If you're a beginner, which I have an awesome beginner marathon training plan for free in another video, so I will link that if you want to check it out. But in that training plan, it's all easy miles, in which case you probably just want to change your shoe every other day, and that's probably going to work perfectly for you. So why do I say a possible third pair of shoes? Now, this kind of depends on the type of runner you are and what you're wanting to get out of your marathon. If you're someone who is looking to just finish the marathon, this is your first one, then you're probably set with 2 pairs of shoes. If you're in a situation where you have a time goal, it's really important to you to get a PR in your marathon, then you're wanting to probably have a shoe that's designed specifically for racing and for speed work. And that way you have the 2 shoes that I talked about before for recovery days, easy days, long run days. And then you have a third shoe that's used very infrequently because these are typically more expensive. And you can save that for any special speed work that you have, but you don't want to use them too much because they usually don't have as much life as the other shoes. And so you want to use them a minimal amount and save them for those races. All right, guys, before I get into my recommendations for a little running rotation, I want to hear your go-tos. Do you have a pair of favorite running shoes that you will be taking into marathon training absolutely no matter what, whether that's the pair you currently have or you're going to be replacing them with a brand new pair? I know I would love to hear your recommendations beyond what I have as well. So let's talk about recovery days first, and possibly your long run days, depending on what feels good for you. So a few options here with all high cushioning. They're just really, really comfortable and feel good on your feet on these recovery days. The Ultra Torin Luxe, the Brooks Glycerin 19, or the Nike Zoom X Invincible Run. Next, you want to have a good daily trainer, just kind of that's in the middle of a recovery shoe that's really cushioned and fast shoe, just really a good balance of both. These are mid-cushion, they feel light, they feel springy, that's what you want to look for. So 3 good options would be the Asics Gel Nimbus 24, the Brooks Ghost 14, and the Nike Air Zoom Pegasus 38. Now, something I wanted to mention before, you hear those numbers on the end, and that's where things can get a little bit overwhelming too. Like, what's the 24? What's the 38? And honestly, it's really just has to do with the model number. Each year, these companies keep taking the same shoe and change them just a tiny bit and put out the same shoe essentially and with a different number. And yes, it's a little bit different. And that's how they keep you returning year after year after year, buying their shoe. So if you find that, let's see, Asics Gel Nimbus, for example, you find a 22 or a 23 out there on Amazon and it's much less expensive, go for it. It's probably also an amazing shoe. All right, so last, if you are springing for a third pair of shoes, that optional racing Speedwork day shoe, here are a few top recommendations for you. These are super light and very likely that they're going to be a plated shoe, whether that's nylon or carbon plated, depends on the shoe. But most racing shoes these days are plated shoes. In fact, I had a hard time finding really good recommendations for non-plated shoes, but I wanted to give you guys a couple because they are less expensive. And really up until a few years ago, no one was using plated shoes to race. So can you race in non-plated shoes? 100% absolutely you can. A few good options are the Hoka Mach 4 and the Adidas Boston 10. Hey, if you are looking for a plated shoe, which just gives you kind of that extra energy return, extra bounce, it can be really, really good for recovery afterwards. The Saucony Endorphin Speed 2. So Speed 2 has a nylon plate, and I've heard amazing things about it. And then the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent 2, which I have, and I've raced my marathons in. If you guys have followed my marathon journey at all, that's what I used to race. And I rarely wear them so that I can keep them nice because they are an expensive shoe. So if you guys have questions about specific shoes, let me know. Questions that came up as I was going through this, not sure how to make those choices, please drop them below. I'm always happy to help you, and I will catch you guys in the